And then when YouTube comes up, it's already muted the sound. If it's not muted, then you're going to hear Zoom and YouTube at the same exact time. But I haven't had an issue because it always starts off. See, it's muted. And that's us.
Which is what you wanted to be muted.
Yeah, because that way you don't hear the volume in addition to the Zoom coming from the YouTube a few seconds later.
Okay.
Good morning, Chevra.
Morning, Stuart.
You want to sit her down?
Morning, Kayvon.
No,
I'm starting, right? Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, good. Thank you. What a great Farbrengen last night. Shkoyach, guys. Wow.
Okay. All right. Can you guys hear me on Zoom from here?
Yeah, it's good, Danny.
Okay, very good.
Yes, we can.
Rambam for Tuesday, the 13th of Tammuz. We're going to start with Perek Hey. We're in the middle of the section of what, guys?
Chametz u'matzah.
Chametz u'matzah. All right, here we go. Ein osir.
Sorry, could he move closer to the mic? It's a little hard to hear him. Sorry.
Huh?
It comes better out on the Zoom and the YouTube if you sit there.
Yeah? All right, fine. Fair enough, guys. Sum up, you got it. All right.
Thank you very much.
No problem. All right. Not comfortable in this seat. You know, just a little.
Angle, a little angle.
All right, here we go. All right. Yes, we're good. Perek Hey, Ein Osir Mishum Chametz BaPesach El Chameshes Mine Hadagam Bilvad. The Isser of Chametz can only stem from substance which comes from the 5 grains. Vehem Shnei Mine Chitim, the 2 types of wheat. All right, the 2 grains that are a derivative of wheat are chita, wheat, vahakusemes, and spelt. Ushleishes Mine Yisrael, 3 types of barley. So the Rambam is considering the barley like the kind of like the sheresh, yeah, like the av, and then the others that are like the toldus. And which are the 3? So barley itself, shiboile shuel v'ashifoin. Shiboile shuel is oats, I think, and shifoin is rye. Avla kitnias, however, kitnias, and I don't know what the exact translation of kitnias is. We could call it legumes, but it's not just legumes. It could go in oirez, rice, the daichan, and millet, poilim, and beans, adoshim, and lentils, kietzbehen, other types of these kitnias, ein b'hem mishum chametz, are not considered chametz. El afilu losh kamach oirez. Even if you needed rice flour, okay, similar, but you used hot water, and hot water is something that normally causes something to rise, right? The chisohu, the begadim, ad shenistapak, ad shenispach, kamay botzek shehechmitz. Even if you needed it and you with hot water and you covered it with a cloth, like those of you that make bread, you know that after you make the dough, what do? You put it in a bowl and you put it in a warm place, samach, right? And you cover it with a towel so that it rises. So you could do all that with a dough that's made of rice, and even if it rises, you're allowed to eat it, especially if you're a Sephardi, and the Rambam was a Sephardi. We don't eat it out a gzeira on Ashkenazim against kitnias, but it's certainly not chametz. This is not called chametz, rather it's called decay. All right, that's what the Rambam says. So this risen rice dough is not called leavened dough; it's decayed dough. All right, halacha beis. Chamesh b'nei dagan elu imlash b'mei peres bilvad. Let's say you did take one of these 5 grains that are that the Rambam says that chametz can come from them, and you needed it without water, but with mei peres, with the juice of fruits alone, without any water at all, it's impossible for it to become chametz. That means if you took flour and pure apple juice and you kneaded it together, that substance will never become chametz. By the way, tangentially, if you go to like some of these pizza stores and they have mezainis dough, which according to Mina Chabad, we probably make hametzi on anyhow, but those mezainis doughs are made with fruit juice. So according to this halacha, we're learning the Rambam, that fruit juice, it's that dough, it's not real chametz. Anyhow, ela afilu hanichan kol hayom adshe nispach habatze harizem mutter ba'achila she'ein mei peres machmitza elamas richin, because so even if you left it in fruit juice the entire day, so you took flour, put it with juice, and let it sit there all day long, that is not considered chametz, and it would be mutter to eat it. Why? Because of the rule, the klal ein mei peres machmitzin. Ella, what
Are you
does it do?
saying I could have had garlic nuts all these years on Pesach?
Maybe. Ella masrichin, it decays it. Mei peres hein. Now, what is considered mei peres? So notice what the Rambam does not say. I'm just going to point it out. He does not mention cream cheese, but he does say yayin, wine, chalav, milk, dvash, honey, zayis, oil, olive oil, umei tapuchim, apple juice, may rimoinim, some beautiful pomegranate juice, v'chol kayotze bahem mishar yenois ushmanim umashkin, and all other similar wines and oils and other liquids. As long as no other water is mixed in, this is considered mei peres. Notice he doesn't mention it, but we would also include avocado in this conversation. The imnis arbehem mayim kol, and if any water got mixed in at all, hare elu machmitzin, this would become chametz. And by the way, as it relates to gebrachs, the halacha is that gebrachs is not gebrachs if it's mei peres, which is why many in the world put avocado on matzah. Yet some people, especially some Lubavitchers, are very, very machmir, not even to put mei peres on their matzah, even though, as it relates to gebrachs, even though the Alter Rebbe says that it's mutter. Why? Because they're afraid that maybe there's some water that would get mixed in. And I think it's a sheet of Rashi that holds that if you have mei peres and there's some water in it, not only does it not make it potentially chametz, but it makes it even quicker to become chametz. So because of that danger, they don't put even mei peres on matzah. All right, halacha gimel. Ein mevashel chitin b'mayim. We do not cook wheat in water. Kegoin rifos. This is cracked wheat. V'loi kamach, also not flour. Kegoin levivos. Levivos, I guess, is this dough balls. So think about like a matzah ball, but instead of making it out of matzah meal, make it out of flour. They used to do this. It was like some sort of like soup dumpling. And the Rambam's telling you that we don't do it, okay? The im bishel, if you did do it, harizeh chametz gomer, he's considering it chametz gomer. V'hushi is baku betavshil. This applies specifically if the kernels of wheat crack open within the dish, okay? So there's a distinction whether the kernels of the wheat or the barley remain closed or if they open up, okay? So ein koilin es habatzek b'shemen ala machabas. We don't fry dough in a frying pan. We don't make donuts on Pesach, at least out of flour. However, we could cook a loaf of matzah or using kemach koler, which is this roasted flour. So here you see clearly from the Rambam that gebrachs was fine back in Egypt or wherever he was living at the time. If you had like very rapidly boiling water.
What are you saying?
Why am I saying what?
Why are you saying that the box was okay to him based on this?
Because he says you can cook a loaf using matzah. So, and by the way, you'll see he'll say it clearly more. All right. Well, hold on one second. If he boiled the water, right, and it was excessively boiled. Afterwards, he took this this flour and he threw it into the boiling water immediately. How is it mutter? This would actually be mutter. basically the Rambam's telling us that cooked flour that's cooked in water is not chametz, right? It's like if you think about it, it doesn't rise; it cooks immediately. Okay, so why don't we do it? However, it's already become the custom in Babylonia, Uvesfard and in Spain, Uvechol Hamarav in the entire West. Lesser Dover said to make this, to not do this. So we don't make these boiled dough balls. It's a gzeira, maybe that the water would not be boiling rapidly enough. And then if you put the dough in, maybe because it's not hot enough, it doesn't cook it immediately, and then it could turn into chametz. So as a result, we don't do these, there's no dough balls. However, matzah balls are fine. So first of all, he says it is permissible to cook this grain or the flour with meperis. That's like semach's garlic knots. So to a dough which was kneaded with fruit juice. In bishul b'meiperes, oy kalahu ala machavas b'shemen. If it was cooked with fruit juice or fried in oil in a frying pan, harizem mutter would be mutter shemei peres. Eina machmitz. And the Rambam clarifies again that mei peres does not make anything chametz. Halacha hey, Carmel shemehave havin oisay ba'ur v'technin oisay. If you had roasted grain, which is singed in fire and then ground into flour. So what do you say? You should not cook it in water. Maybe it wasn't roasted well. And then it'll become chametz when you cook it. So the Rambam, meaning normally if you roast the flour beforehand, that flour is not turning into chametz. Elamai, the Rambam's saying don't take that roasted flour and mix it with water, because if it wasn't roasted properly, and this, by the way, this is really the concept of gebrachs. Meaning the reason why we don't eat gebrachs, those that have the minhag not to eat gebrachs, not like some people that come from the Chazayin Ish or the Gaon, but the people that have that minhag, it's because we're afraid that the matzah, which was baked, there may have been a bubble and there's some flour in there that wasn't properly roasted. And if it comes into contact with water, maybe could become chametz. That's this idea, and this is what the Rambam's saying. He says, "Shema nikla ba'or yafa, v'nimsa machmas k'mevasha oisay." It'll turn into chametz when you cook it. V'chein kishemoylin hakaderes chadashos. He says similarly when you're preparing new pots, a mevasha behen elamatza afuya shechazu. You should only cook in these pots. I don't really understand why he was mentioning the new pots. I didn't get that, but either way, he's saying that when you're cooking in these new pots, you should not cook regular flour, rather matzah that was baked and then ground into flour. You can make your matzah meal, you make your matzah brine, make it all, it's delicious according to the Rambam. Okay, avol kamach kali asur, but he says don't use the roasted flour. Shamaloi kalu yafa, maybe it wasn't roasted that well. V'yavoy lidei chimas, and it could maybe turn into chametz. Halacha vav ein boilin as a sarim b'mayim b'pesach. We don't stir barley in water on Pesach in order to remove the husk. Why? Because the kernels are soft, and then they become could become leavened very quickly. In bolel, but if you did it, so im rafu kidei she'im hanichan al pi habiv. So if you did this with the barley in order to remove the husks, okay, and it got soft to the point that when you placed it by the opening of the roasting pan, where the loaves were normally baked, hari elu asurim, then it would be usur. So if it did not reach this degree of softness, it's permitted. So basically, the distinction that the Rambam is making, I don't understand this whole putting it next to the roasting pan, but the point is like this: with barley, if it gets to the point where the husks are open and it gets soft in the middle, that's considered that it's leavened and it's usur. If it doesn't get to that point, then it would be mutter. Okay? Halacha zayin. Hachitim, wood, wheat. Mutter livlal oisam b'mayin kadei lahasas suban. You're allowed to stir. By the way, it's fascinating just to learn these halachas and understand that. Oh, good picture. That back then it was actually a normal thing to handle wheat or barley on Pesach. We learned in the Gemara that they bake matzah on Pesach, which today it's unheard of to do anything. Flour is chametz. Actually, flour is not chametz. Flour is what they make matzah out of. Same thing with barley. Barley is not chametz. When barley comes in contact with water and it gets soft in the middle, then it's considered chametz. Hachitim. Mutter livlol oisen b'mayim kedei lahasar seiba. You could put it in water in order to remove the bran. But you have to grind it right away. The way you grind fine flour. It's already become the minhag with all the Jews in Babylonia. Does anybody know where Eretz HaTzvi is? That's correct, Eretz Yisrael. Who knows why it's called Eretz HaTzvi?
Stretches.
Oh, very good, Daniel Ram. Eretz HaTzvi is called Eretz HaTzvi, the land of the deer, because it stretches out. And Eretz Yisrael Taka stretches it out. So that's why it's called Eretz HaTzvi.
Always room for one more.
Huh? Always room for one more. That's right. Like the Beis Hamikdash, like some of these apartments in Mea Sharim, they always got room for another kid. Ubisvad and Ubisfarid, and also in Spain, Ubari Marav, and also in the western cities. So basically, in the entire world, it's already become the minhag. By the way, notice, I don't know why, before when he mentioned the minhag, he didn't mention Eretz Yisrael. He just mentioned Babylonia, and he mentioned the West, and he mentioned Spain. Here he mentioned, No. Yeah, remember where the Rambam is. The Rambam is either in Egypt or he's in Spain. So he's talking about, whatever's west of where he was. No, he's not talking about Eretz Yisrael. He said, as he translates in the Chayina, the Western diaspora. Okay, so it's already become the minhag. We do not mix the wheat with water. We don't stir it up. So this is a gzeira, lest you leave it and it turns into chametz. Halacha ches, and this is what we're used to today, where we do not actually mix wheat with water on Pesach. Halacha ches. Tavshil nisbashel v'nimsu boisa ayron achiti. Let's say you made a tavshil, you made a cooked dish, and it had wheat or barley in it, right? So im nizbaku, if they cracked open, harikol tavshil asur, then the entire dish, which was mixed with these wheat kernels that have opened up, hari nisariv by chametz. You have to look at it like a taruvas chametz. You have to get rid of the whole thing. The im loy nizbaku. Let's say you put the wheat kernels in there, or the barley kernels into your dish, but they didn't crack open. So in this case, what we do is moitzian oisan, you pull them out. The surfing oisan, you burn them. On Pesach, you eat the rest of the cooked dish that you made with the wheat and the barley. She'ein hadagan she'nivlal einis bashal v'leinis baka, because any grain, right, that's been mixed with water but didn't crack open, it's not considered a chametz gomer shel Torah. But eina elam divrei sefer, and this is only a rabbinic prohibition that we don't eat it. Halacha test. Shum shenemar ushmartem es hamatzos, being that it says in Shemot Yud Beis that we watch the matzos kolaymar. It's saying hizaru b'matzah v'shimru oisim mikol sad chimutz lefi mikol sad chimutz. It says that therefore you have to be careful with the matzah, and you have to really protect them from becoming chametz. So lefikach amr chacham. Therefore, our sages told us sarach adam lihizoher badagon she'oichal mimenu b'Pesach. You have to be careful with the grain that you eat from it on Pesach, meaning the grain that we make the matzah out of. Shelo yovei alav mayim achar shenikser, that there's no water that comes in contact with that wheat after it's been harvested. Ad shelo yiyeh bo shum chimutz, so that there will be no chance of it becoming chametz. So this is taka what we do today. They call it matzah, shmura matzah, shmura mitzah katsira, right? I think that's what the from matzah say. So dogan shetava banohar. This is an interesting case. He says, let's just say you had a grain which was on a boat. The river, it's sunk in the river. So now it's clearly come into contact with water. Or just water fell in it. Just like you're usher to eat it on Pesach. kach asur l'kaimai, so too it's asur to keep this in your possession. So Ella, what should you do? Moichrei liyisrael, you should sell it to a Jew before Pesach. And you have to let him know. You should have to let him know that this grain needs to be consumed before Pesach. If you sold it to a non-Jew before Pesach, you should only sell a small amount to each of these non-Jews, meaning a small amount that they are going to only consume for themselves, not a large amount. Why? So that they should consume it before Pesach. If you sell a large amount of this wetted flour, he may go take this and then sell it to a Jew without telling him that this flour had been made wet from before Pesach, and then the Jew will not unknowingly use this problematic flour, maybe, or maybe keep it over Pesach. Okay, halacha yud. Dagan shenafal of delef. So let's just say you have your grain and you have water that's dripping from the roof. Okay, so kolzman shu toired tipa achar tipa. As long as it's constantly a flow of dripping water onto the grain, I feel kolayam kula. Even if it was the entire day, it's dripping on it. It's not going to come to be leavened. Why? Because this is this concept of as long as the dough or the grain is being manipulated, it's being agitated, then it will not become chametz. Chametz comes from the flour sitting with water, and then it sits and it rises. Avol kishapaisek, once the leak stops, im nishtaha kashir. How is it also? If it remains sitting there according to the shear of how long it takes for dough to rise, then it would become asur.
Wait, what does it become? Sorry, Dan. What does it become chametz after the leaking is stopped? It's not in water. The water has stopped dripping on it.
No, the idea that the Rambam is saying, Kiran, is that so long as the dough or that the flour is being moved around, it will not become chametz. So let's just say you had water dripping on the dough. That's considered movement. That's considered agitation. So as long as that's happening, it's not becoming chametz. Once it stops, suddenly your leak stops, and now it's sitting there with water. Now, after 18 minutes or whatever the shear is, it rises, and now it would be chametz. Make sense?
Thanks, Dan. Yeah.
Okay. It's very loud. All right. Where were we? Halacha yidal. Ein loshen b'pesach isa gedola. We don't need a large dough on Pesach. Why? Shema tachmetz. Maybe it'll become chametz. El shir chala bilvad. You use the shear of what would become halachically chala, the amount of dough that you need in order to be mafresh chala. That's the amount that we use. I remember Rabbi Zion saying that normally it's a 5-pound bag of flour. Although I think I saw somewhere else that it's maybe 4 pounds, but whatever, it's Eric Zeh. And he's going to give us the amount soon. So that's the shear of the amount that we do, which is, by the way, if you look at a matzah bakery, the guy that's kneading the dough, there's a very specific size bowl. It's not like they have a massive bowl and they do tons at one time. It's a very set amount, and it's this measurement, okay? You do not use hot water when you make the dough, nor water that's been heated in the sun, nor water that you drew from a well that day, because why? It's been exposed to the sun, it's been warmed up. Ella b'mayim shalanu, with this thing called mayim shalanu, water which is rested, which is why taka today, the water that they use to make matzah, they get it the night before. That's called mayim shalanu.
Doesn't mean our water.
No. It means rested water. The im of our but if you violated this and you actually needed dough with one of these things, hare hapas asura, the matzah that you make from it is asur. Halacha yud beis. A woman should not sit under the sun and knead the dough. Nor outside under the sky on a cloudy day. Even if it's an area where the sun is not directly shining on it. You should not leave the dough that you're in the middle of making and go and do something else. Don't go check your emails. However, it says that if she kneads it and bakes it, let's say she's kneading and she's baking. So tzricha shnei kelim shalmayim. She needs, so she's kneading the dough, she's baking it, she's kneading the dough, she's baking. So the Rambam says, tzricha shnei kelim shalmayim. You need 2 vessels of probably, hopefully, cold water. Echad shemekatefes boy, ve'echad shemetzanenes boy yada. So one of them is you use that water to help shape the loaves of matzah that are going in, and the other one to cool down her hands. She's working her hands are getting hot. You stick it into the cold water to get it cooled down, and then you continue going. All right, second half of the halacha, Yud Beis V'im Avra. Let's say she violated this. V'lasha tachas Hashem. She did do the kneading out under the sun. Or she didn't dip her hands in the cold water to cool them down. Or she used more than this 5-pound bag of challah. She did a really large dough. Hapas muteres, the Rambam said in these cases the dough is still going to be mutter. The kamash, why? Because chances are it still did not become chametz. Meaning, just the fact that the sun was shining on it, this is like it's a preventive measure to prevent it from, because we know that hot water causes things to rise quicker. Okay, and that's why these are like a set of steps that prevent you from being in that situation. But if she did it, he says the chances of it happening are still quite slim, and therefore it would be mutter. So if
assuming that she got the into the oven within the shear. For
sure. It's just talking about the idea that she made a dough that was bigger, but she made the matzah and she did it quickly and all that. It's still mutter. By the way, tangentially, I was just thinking about the fact that last year they did mitzvah matzah erev Pesach behind Shari Tefillah, which is outdoors. So I was just thinking, I think they have to make sure that the sun is not shining on it. Or at least, we don't pass according to the Rambam or from the Rambam, but that's this concept that really you have to watch out for that. All right, so the last part of the halakha is kama shir challah. What is this shear of challah? So it says k'moy shloisha v'arboim b'chaymesh beitza, which is what? 43.5 eggs. Kaguf ha-beitza beinin is like medium-sized eggs. And a 5th egg, 43 and a 5th eggs. Kaguf ha-beitza beinin is loy kimishkala. This is the volume of these eggs, not the weight of these eggs. And as it's brought down in many places, how do you know that 43, I don't know about the 5th, is challah? Because what's the gematria of challah? 43. Shkoya, Rabbi Mendel.
Shkoya.
Shkoyach of Danny. Just to clarify the halacha l'maisa when it comes to hafrashas challah. So Rabbi Zio, he says that if you bake dough using less than 2.5 pounds of challah, then you don't need to do hafrashas challah. If you use flour from 2.5 pounds to 5 pounds, then we're mafresh, but we don't make a bracha. And if you use the 5-pound bags, then according to everyone, we take off challah and we make a bracha. Very good. Halacha Yud Gimel. So just like we learned in Halacha Yud that anytime a person is working the dough, it won't rise. And we applied it before to water dripping. We're going to apply it to a person kneading it. Halacha Yud Gimel calls man shadam oisik v'batzik. The entire time that a person is busy with the dough, they're kneading it with their hands or they're using a roller. Afilu kaliyim kula. Even if they do it the entire day, it's not going to become chametz. But if at a certain point they lifted up their hands and they left the dough, the Rambam is going to give 3 different ways how to measure of how long you need to wait till the dough becomes chametz. Number 1 is that you leave the dough until when you bang the dough, it makes a sound. So then that's way number 1. It became chametz. You need to burn it right away. However, if it doesn't make a sound when you bang it, so if still you waited and allowed the dough to sit there for amount of time it takes to walk a mil, which is anywhere from 18 to 24 minutes, and that's the famous 18 minutes, then kfar hechmitz, also it already became chametz, visarf biyad, you have to burn it right away. And way number 3 of how you can tell if it became chametz is v'chein imichsifu panav, k'adam she'am d'sareis, if the surface of the dough became wrinkled, like a person that has his hairs standing on his body. So then hareza asur la'achloi. This one also is forbidden to eat it, but ein chayav in olav karis. You're not going to be chayav karis if you did eat this dough. Halacha yod dalet. We're going to clarify that the shear that we gave of banging the dough to see if it makes a sound, that's not what causes the dough to be chametz. That's just an indicator that this dough became chametz. And this applies in the following scenario. If a person has 2 doughs and they stopped working them at the same time, one of them, when you bang it, it makes a sound, one of them doesn't, then being that one of them makes a sound, so that means that both of them already became chametz. You don't need it to actually make a sound. It's just an indicator that it became chametz. And how you stay isis should be hayad mehen. 2 doughs, you lifted your hands. Mehen hayad mehen niloishes beis achas v'nishto. You're reading them together and you waited. Ha'achas ben yesh lakol va'acheres ein lakol. So the din is that shtei and yisarf, you have to burn both of them. B'harein chametz gamur, both of them is considered to be chametz. Halacha tezvav, when a person is kneading dough and making dough for matzah, you shouldn't make any type of designs because it takes time. Don't make designs on Pesach. Like, for example, don't make animal designs or bird designs, because a woman, it'll take her time, and it's going to turn into chametz while they're making it. Therefore, if you have a baker, they are mutar and laseisim, they can make designs on the dough because they're experts, and they're able to do it very quickly. A regular homeowner is not allowed to make designs, even if they use a sort of mold, a pre-made design, they use a utensil for it, you can't do it because maybe other people are going to then decide to make designs without a mold, and they're going to allow the dough to just sit there and wait, and it's going to turn into chametz. Halacha Tezayin, we're going to be speaking about people that would use water to clean their hands from the dough. So we don't want the dough in the water to collect together and sit there and become chametz. You have to pour out the water on a slope so the dough doesn't gather together and wait there and turn into chametz. Water that you use to wash your hands from the dough. And water that you use to clean out the kneading dough after you kneaded dough. And also water that you use for your hands during the times that you're kneading. You have to pour them out in a slope in order that they shouldn't gather together in one place and together turn into chametz. It sounds like if you put it on a slope and you're going to have little pieces of dough scattered, then that's not a problem.
The birds are going to come and eat it.
Is that what it is?
So we said about you don't have to check in your yard for chametz, because the birds are going to come and they're going to eat all the.
And why is it that if it's not you're not going to put it on a slope, you're going to put it on a flat surface that the birds.
Different sizes, right? Everything that comes out your hands is going to pool in one place. It's going to be too big. If it slopes off, some of it will be here, some of it will be down, some of it will be down already.
Okay. Okay. Halacha Yud Zayin. Now we're going to speak about giving food that could potentially become chametz to your pets, to animals. So it says the Rambam, Ein Sher Nesamurson, we're not allowed to soak bran umanichin lifnei atar negolim and leave it in front of your chickens because shema yachmitz, maybe it's going to sit there and turn into chametz. Aval, however, chultin lehem hamusan beroitchin umanichin lifnei. You could boil the bran and place it in front of them. And like Reb Danny taught in Halacha Gimel that if you boil something, then it cannot become chametz. We don't do it because maybe the water is not going to be boiled well enough. But in order to allow us to feed your chickens, we rely on the Iker Hadin that you can boil it and then place it in front of them. And Rambam says, however, the minig is, I take it back. The minig is that we do not boil the bran, and maybe the water is not going to boil well and it's going to turn into chametz. So in contrast to Yud Zayin, where we said you can't place the bran in front of them, now we're going to speak about not where you place it, but you make sure they eat it right away. that umutar lalush latarnegolin mursan, you're allowed to knead for chickens bran, kemach or flour, umachilon miyad, and you feed them right away. Nice and lifname, or you give it to them, and you're standing watching the chickens, making sure that it doesn't sit there and wait the amount of time it takes to walk a mill. Then that would be permitted. And same thing, the entire time that the chickens are pecking and eating this bran, or the owner is turning the bran over with his hand, he's working it, it's not going to become chametz. Because anytime a person is working it, it doesn't rise. And when the chickens stop eating from it, then right away you have to rinse out the utensil that they were using with water. And once again, you have to pour it out in a slope. Halacha Yud Tes. A woman shouldn't soak bran that she's going to take in her hand to the bathhouse. She shouldn't do that because it might turn into chametz. Avol shafal b'sari yavi. She's allowed to rub this dry bran on her skin, even though a person's skin sometimes, especially in a bathhouse, can produce sweat. Sweat on a person's body is not considered water to make flour or bran into chametz. And a person shouldn't chew wheat and place it on his wounds because a person's saliva that does cause for grain to become chametz. A person should not put flour into charoises that we make for Pesach. And if a person did put it, you have to pour it and get rid of it right away. Because the mixture of charoises, which has things in it that are sharp, together with flour, not only does it become chametz, it becomes chametz quicker. And
It does not have water. That was vinegar. That's what the ingredient said before.
Like Reb Danny said, that mei peiros by itself does not become chametz, but mei peiros mixed together with flour, mei peiros that's mixed together with water, and we're saying here that charoises is a mixture of mine peiros, of different types of produce, and they have water in them.
It was like dates or raisins or whatever mixed with vinegar.
There's some water in there.
There's some water in there.
Said vinegar before. Okay.
But if you dilute it with a drop of water, which is what you're going to do if you're going to make it into a dish.
Yeah, you're saying good. If there's absolutely no water, it's not a problem. Here we're saying that the charis has a mixture of has some water in it, and therefore it comes quicker. And we also don't put flour into mustard. And if you did put it in, then you should eat it right away. Halacha chav. Mutar litain hatavlin v'ashumshmin v'haketzach v'kayitzim v'natzeichat. You're allowed to place spices, sesame seeds, poppy seeds into dough. And v'chein mutar lolo she'isa b'mayim v'shemen. Also, you're allowed to knead dough with water or oil or honey or milk. And you can use all of these substances l'katif behen to smooth out the dough. However, on the first day of Pesach, you're not allowed to make dough or to smooth dough with water.
Right now we're talking about the dough that we're using for matzah.
For matzah, 100%. However, if you want to make matzah for the first day of Pesach, says the Rambam, you're not allowed to use anything else aside of water, not because those other things will turn into chametz, because we said before that they don't. It's just because on the first day of Pesach we have to eat what's called lechem oini, poor man's bread, and the definition of lechem oini is flour specifically mixed with water. If you use fruit juice, then it's called matzah ashira. That you don't do that.
Not fruit juice.
Not fruit juice. Also, lalash lekatev l'mayim bad limishum chametz. Not because of chametz. Ela kadesh yelechem oini should be poor man's bread. By yimur yishon b'vad who should tzarich liyis zichron lechem oini. It's only in the first day. Halacha chaf aleph. Now we're going to speak about kashering your utensils. If you have an earthenware vessel, or today if you have china that you used in a chametz when it was cold, then mutar lishtamish ben matzah b'tzoyin. You're allowed to use matzah for Pesach that's cold. Except for a utensil that you place cold yeast or klish manichin b'charesis, a utensil that you put in a cold charesis, those things you can't because it has in it something. It has things that is the chimutzai, its sharpness is very strong, and therefore, even though it's cold, flavor will transfer, and therefore we don't use it. And so too with a kneading bowl, that you need chametz, and you leave the dough inside of it until it rises. That kneading bowl also you shouldn't use on Pesach. It's like a Beisa'er. You don't use it on Pesach, even just something that's cold. Okay, now we're going to speak about other utensils that you could use them on Pesach if you kasher them with something called libun, which means you use a fire, you use coals to the point where it becomes so hot where it's like it's white. Chav Beis, biv shel cheres. A biv shel cheres means if you have an earthenware roasting pan, she'oifin alav chalois chametz, that you use it to bake chalois, loaves of chametz the entire year. You don't use this same utensil to bake matzahs, but if you filled it up with coals, and you heated up the place that you used to cook it with chametz, then mutter lavashel of matzah, you've kashered it, and now you can cook on it matzah. Halacha chav gimel. Now we're going to speak about other utensils that you use not with fire, but you used it with water. So now you can also kasher it on Pesach through hagala, which is using boiling hot water to kasher it. Clay matachos, if you use metal utensils, or clay avonim, or utensils made out of stone, that you used it for chametz the entire year with hot water that's in a kli rishon. The definition of a kli rishon is that this is the utensil that was placed on the fire. You're going, for example, real possum, different types of pots. You have to place them into an even larger utensil of a kli gadol, an even larger utensil shel mayim that's filled with water. Then you have to heat up the water until it'll cause all the flavor in these utensils to spit out. And then after you're done doing hagala, you have to rinse out these utensils in cold water. Then you can use them for matzah. So to a knife, which is made out of metal. You heat up the blade and the handle in a kli rishon. Then you can use it for matzah. And again, with a knife, in addition to kashering it, you also have to be very careful that whenever you kasher something, you have to make sure there's no substance on it. A knife is a very common that you have on the blade of the knife. If it has serrated, you have to make sure that all of the substance is removed, and then you can go through the process of kashering it. Halacha chaf dalid. Clay matachis va'avonim. If you have vessels made out of metal or stones, clay eitzim, or utensils made out of wood, shenishtamish ben chametz beklisheni, that you used it for chametz as a klisheni. Klisheni means that this is not the utensil that was placed on the fire, rather it was poured into the second utensil. For example, kairos v'kosos, bowls and cups. These are the utensils we use to eat, so it's already the klisheni. Noisin oisin l'soichli gadol. Also, then you have to place them into a big vessel. Place upon them boiling hot water. You inflate and you leave them inside of this large utensil until it spits out its flavor. Then you rinse it off with cold water. Then you can use it for matzah. Halacha chav hey. Now we're going to clarify that up until now we were talking about metal, stone, and wood. Now we're going to speak about a kli cheres, earthenware utensils in China. Once again, we hold, and the Alter Rebbe holds, the Rambam holds, that you're not able to kasher a kli cheres. Hagala, you can't do on an earthenware utensil. The Alter Rebbe says because hagala will never fully remove its flavor. And libun, you can't perform on a kli cheres because you're always going to be worried that you're going to break the kli cheres if you perform libun on it. So there's no way to kasher a kli cheres, which is why, like in the Beis Hamikdash, when they would use a kli cheres, the Torah says that you have to break it because the flavor absorbed inside of it from the carbon will become nicer. There's no way to kasher it, and yet therefore it has to be broken.
There are some places that they put dishes in a kiln, no?
To make it first.
Kasher or to make kasher?
That sounds like libun.
Yeah.
Sounds like libun.
And they do it in a way where it doesn't break the keli.
A klicheres?
Yeah,
But then the problem is, does that really take out all the flavor?
I don't know if
Well,
it's good.
I've
I've heard
it's
it,
not a commonly available.
Yeah.
method. You can't do it yourself.
right, you have to take it somewhere.
If-
And I don't know if it's good enough for Pesach, maybe it's okay for kasher.
Your legal is not that.
Right. One more thing now that we're going to mention this halacha is that it's glass, very famously. So the glass, you have the two opposites opinions. The Sephardim hold that glass
It's not bad.
doesn't at all absorb any flavor, and Ashkenazim hold that glass, being that it comes from sand, it's compared to klicheres, and therefore it can't be kosher. Some people, the Alter Rebbe says it can't be kosher. Where does he say those halachas? By Hilchos Pesach. So some people say that we only take on this chumrah of glass for Pesach, but throughout the year there's more room to be makel.
Fine when the door of your oven has glass in it. So Rabbi Zajac says cover it with foil, but practically,
Very good.
Yeah.
It's interesting here. The Rambam is going to say that glass is like a klicheres, like Ashkenazim. I don't know if this is. He says it across the board. Klicheres, any earthenware utensil. That you used chametz in hot water. Bein klirishin, whether it's a klirishin, for example, a kedera, a pot, or bein klisheni if it's a klisheni, like a plate. Or bein shayu mishuchin ba'avar, or if you have a utensil that was glazed and coated with lead, you make them similar to glass, or bein shayu cheres k'may shehein, or whether it didn't have any type of coating on it, but it was just pure earthenware. Ein mishtamshin by matzah. There's no way you can use it for matzah. Leave those utensils for after Pesach, and then you can cook in them. Final halacha chavav.
This does not say glass, by the way. At the bottom of 29, it says this is China.
Ke'ein zuchuchis, similar to glass. Oh, yeah, China, because he's talking about a klicheretz that's glazed, and our China is glazed. He says that that's similar to glass. Okay, halacha chavav. What were to happen if you have a utensil that was used with water and you want to perform Haggalah, which we said before, Haggalah is you take this utensil and you put it into an even larger vessel. What happens if you don't have a larger vessel? So what do? You take a little bit of dough and you put it around the border of this utensil, and then you fill it up with water. And now the water will both take out the flavor that's absorbed in the vessel, and even any flavor that got absorbed in the rim itself, like if while you were using it for matzah, some liquid spritzed on it. So same thing over here, the water will be able to flow over and go onto the rim, and you're going to be able to kasher it correctly. Kli rishon, if you have a kli rishon, that you wanted to boil, you wanted to do Haggalah. You couldn't find a larger vessel. So you use a border of tit on the outside, and you fill it up with water until the water will be able to flow over onto the border. And you can heat up the water, and that's enough. And then you have to rinse it off in cold water. And you can use this vessel for matzah. Perek number 6.
Gotta move.
It's not back yet.
Half hour.
All right. Perek Shishi, 12 halacha. We're going to continue on the topic of what can be used for matzah. It says the Rambam mitzvah say minator le'echol matzah b'leil chamisha asar. It's a mitzvah d'oraisa to eat matzah on the night of the 15th. Shenemar be'erev tochlu matzahs. As it says in the pasuk, be'erev in the evening you should eat matzah. So there are a lot of psukim here, and each one has different ideas. And there's one that says shishis yamim tochal matzos uba shvi'i tishpos. And so we learn out from there, ma shvi'i is rishus, af kol shisha is rishus. But that means, what about the first day? So then it says, al matzah sumrom yochlu, you have to eat it, you eat the carbon pesach with matzah. So we know that the first night is daraisa. But then we only would know when the Beis Hamikdash is kaim, you have a carbon pesach. So it says the pasuk, ba'erev tochlu matzos, b'chol makom, b'chol zman. The Rambam is saying that even without a Beis Hamikdash, without a carbon pesach, there's still a separate chiyuv daraisa to eat matzah on the first night. V'lo tola achila zu b'carbon pesach. The Torah is not connecting this achila to the korban pesach. Ela zu mitzvah atzma. It's a mitzvah by itself. And the shear of the mitzvah of eating at night, like we know for the shear of anything that's to be done at night, the shear is all night. Avo b'shar regal, but the rest of the yantiv, achilas matzah reshus, ratza ochel matzah. If you want, you could eat matzah. Ratza ochel orez. If you want, you could eat rice, or dofen, or millet, or kloyos, or peros, or legumes, or fruits. Anything else? Avo b'lech hamisha aser bilvad. Chova, it's a chova to eat matzah. Umishachal kizayis, when you eat a shear of kizayis, yatzir dechava. So your yotze, your shear, eating matzah do raisa. Halacha beis.
Wait, you said you're Kol HaLayla?
Kol halayla.
Don't you stop on the first night?
So it's a machlokas, Rishonim. Some hold it ad chatzos, some hold this until the morning. But to make sure that we're covering all the days, our shear is to eat from matzah before chatzos. But anyway, that's talking about the afikomen. We're yotzi our mitzvah daraisa of matzah in matzah after rachza. So for sure that's before chatzos. For most people, I don't know how long your magid goes, but my magid certainly we get to rachza before chatzos. Right. Well, halacha beis. Bala matzah yatza. If you swallow the matzah, you didn't chew it, you didn't taste it, you just down the gullet, you're yotza. However, bala maror lo yatza. By maror, I guess the inyan is to feel the pain, to really experience it. And if you're going to skip over that and just swallow it, you're not yotze. Bala matzah u maror ke'echad. If you do it together, yidei matzah yatza, yidei maror lo yatza. You're yotze your mitzvah of matzah. You're not yotze your mitzvah of maror. Shehamaror tefela lematzah. So the reason why you still yotze the matzah is because the fact that you were bolea the maror does not inhibit your ability to be yotze the matzah through that method, because the maror is tofel to the matzah. Karacham b'siv, if you wrap them both up in I don't know what is it, a reed, a leaf, cabbage, lettuce wrap, something like that. And you swallow it all together. Because now you're going to say that both of those were tafel to the wrap, and you can't be yotze either one. Halacha gimel. Achal matzah below kavana. You ate matzah without kavana. That old listing. People force you to eat the matzah. You didn't. You just bal karchol. So you still yotze your chiyuv. Achal kazayis matzah. If you eat a kazayis matzah, v'ho nichba eish tuso. And you were seizing, you were not in your right mind. And afterwards you got better. You're chayiv to eat again after you get better. Because that eating was at the time that you were potter from all the mitzvahs, and just like you wouldn't be responsible for negative things that you did during that time, so too you don't get the zachar of positive things, that you do at that time. Halacha daled. Ein al yotzich yidei chovas achilas matzah el and kein achla me'echad mechameshes haminim. You're only, like the Rambam mentioned in the previous parak, you're only yotzi your chiyuv of achilas matzah if it's from the 5 minim. Shenemar lo socha alav chametz shivas yamim tocha alav matzos. So the same thing that's chametz makes chametz is the same thing that makes matzah. Devar ma'ba emidei chimutz im achlan matzah yatza. In other words, the things that if you're not careful, they become chametz. Those are the things that if you are careful and you make matzah and you eat them, that's what you can yotze your mitzvah. Avo shar devarim can go in oris v'dochen v'kitnios ein yotze beheni de matzah levishay ben chametz. Just like they don't become chametz, so too you can't use them to fulfill your mitzvah of achilas matzah. Halacha hey. Ha'osa isam and achitim umina oris. What if you make it from both? Make it from both a combo of wheat and rice. So the Rambam paskins that all you need is to have the flavor of flour, the flavor of grain in it, and your yotze. Others shitas hold that no, you need to have the real shear of matzah. If you add other things, it's fine as long as you still have whatever the shear is, whether it's a kazayis or a kavetza in the mixture, in order for it to be considered matzah to be mekayim mitzvah. Isis haklavim. So what about dog bread, which is going to be made from a combination of rice and bran? So if the shepherds who are out in the fields who are very hungry, would take a bite of that and eat it, then we can say it's roy lachilas adam. And if you do that, you're yotze. But if it's so coarse, if it's so thick, if it's so tasteful that even the roim out in the field wouldn't eat it, so then already ein yotzeba. That's not considered a shmura, because it's not considered thought of as human consumption. Matzah shalosha v'meiperos. Matzah that you kneaded it with meiperos. Yotza ba yidei chavasu b'Pesach. You can be yotza your chiyuv of matzah b'Pesach. Does that fit with what we said in the last parak, or is that seemingly contradictory?
Yes, it's mayperos with water.
Mayperos with water. So in other words, for sure you have some water because, like you said, there has to be.
It's like matzah shira. Matzah shira has eggs in it, right?
Oh, so something like that, you can be yotzi your chiyuv with it. So you can be yotzi your chiyuv with something that's called matzah ashira, as long as it also has in it water as well. Oh, and there's a note on the bottom that says that we only use flour and water without mixing it with anything else.
You're sick, like someone who's sick who can't have regular matzah can have matzah shira.
Oh, so somebody who's sick. So I think we'll get to that in a minute. Very good. Aval ein lashon osa b'yayin, but you can't mix it with wine, or b'shemen, or with oil, or with chelav, or with milk, like we explained in the last chapter, that because on the first night there's an inyan to do lechem oni, to have poor man's bread, and this is too fancy for poor man's bread. And if you did it even b'diavad, you're not yotze, because again lechem oni is ma'akev, and therefore you have to make sure that it's real lechem oni on the first night. Ein yotzin lo b'pas mursin lo b'pas subin. Now with this kind of brand and now with that kind of brand, aval loshhu es hakemach b'subin shalo. But you can knead it with whole wheat.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called? With all of the imperfections that it comes with. And that is allowed. Also, the other way, if you're going to be fine, clean, sifted flour, that's also fine. We don't say that what we would call white bread or white matzah is fancy enough that it comes out of the category of lechem oni. No, that's fine. You can use that in your yotzi your chiyuv. Halachavav. Echad matzah shen efes betana, or whether the matzah was baked in an oven, or be'ilpas, or in a deep pan. Whether you first put the dough in the pan and then you heat it up. Whether you heat it up first and then you add the dough. Even if you baked it in the ground. All of these different methods for cooking it are allowed. Even if it wasn't cooked fully all the way through yotzima, that's fine. As long as if you break it up, you're not going to have strings of dough hanging it together, because then already you're going to say that there's chametz left in the bread, in the matzah. And you can be yotze your chiyuv with a wet or a soaked matzah, as long as it doesn't crumble, as doesn't disintegrate, fall apart. But if you boiled it, because that method of cooking it is already going to lose its flavor of bread, of matzah, and that already is not considered eating matzah. Like matzah balls. Matzah balls that are boiled, that already is not, you can't be yotzi your chiyuv of matzah with that. Halacha zayin. Ein adon yotzi de chavosa v'chilas matzah shehi asura lo. You cannot be yotzi your chiyuv of eating matzah with something that is asur to you. Kigon, for example, sha'achal tevel, you ate tevel, o ma'aser rishon, shalom netot shumaso.
Matzah that was made from tevel. Matzah was made from.
Correct. Those kind of things are asur to you, and therefore you can't be yotzi your chiyuv with them. Or if you stole somebody else's matzah, that's not allowed. But if you stole someone else's flour and you made your own matzah, that's fine. Zajac. The Rambam is hinting to what he taught us in Hilchos Brachos, that if you ate tevel, you don't make a birkas hamazon. If you ate ma'aser rishon shalom nifresha, you don't make a birkas hamazon. But something that was stolen, again, with the same thing, with same dinim. You stole someone's bread and you ate it.
Matzah bread, you also don't make a birkas hamazon. No,
Rambam's not talking about matzah bread here.
no.
Well, I'm talking about things that are usher to you.
Last halacha. Okay.
Halacha ches. Hakohanim yotzim b'chalo b'truma alpha b'sho matzah she'ina roy l'chol adam. So what we said before, that you can't eat if it's usher to you. It's not a problem if it's usher to other people, but it's mutter to you. For example, kohanim, even though everybody else can't eat their challah that they receive and the truma that they receive, but they're allowed to eat, and therefore it's fine. V'chein yotzim b'matzah sham ha'isashin b'Yerushalayim. You can be yotzi with eating your ma'aser shin in Yerushalayim. But you can't be yotze with matzah shall be kurim, which also, just like Ma'aser Sheni, has to be in Yerushalayim. What's the difference? You can't eat bikurim in every place. You have to eat your bikurim in Yerushalayim. What about Ma'aser Sheni? What about Ma'aser Sheni also has to be in Yerushalayim? Ma'aser Sheni efshar sheyifde v'yochal b'kol makom. So there's a trick. By Ma'aser Sheni, you're allowed to be poda'et for something else, and you take the mamon to Yerushalayim, and you can therefore the kodesh status of the Ma'aser Sheni gets transferred from the matzah to the money, and the matzah becomes kol, and you can eat the matzah in your village, and that's why you can eat Ma'aser Sheni in Yerushalayim to be yotzi chiyuv. But bikurim, which is not able to be eaten in your village through any tricks or methods at all, you can't eat it even in Yerushalayim to be yotzi chiyuv. Because what's the reason for this? Why does it have to be b'chol makom? Because of b'chol moshosechem tochel matzos, and the drasha is matzah haruya lecha b'chol moshavos hu sheyotzin ba yidei chovo. It has to be at least possible, some way that you could eat it in any place. But if it's something that there's no way you can eat it other than Yerushalayim, you can't be yotzer chiyuv even in Yerushalayim. Halacha test. Chalos toda or kiki nazir. So what if you have matzos that was designated and was made specifically for use in a carbon? Shaso osan la'atzman ein yosan bahen. You cannot be yotzer chiyuv with them. Shneimar v'shmartem es hamatzos. It has to be shmura for matzah. Matzah mishtameres le'inyin matzah belvadu sheyotzin ba. That's the kind of matzah that you can be yotzer chiyuv if it was specifically watched and designated for eating matzah. Aval zu mishtameres le'inyin hazevach. These matzos were shmira for the carbon, and that's not allowed. If you made them to be sold, even though you didn't necessarily make them the same matzah for your eating, you can use those. So you know you have in the back of your mind that if I don't end up selling this, then I'll eat it. You did do shmir l'shem matzah, at least on some level, because you know there was that chance. Halacha yud. Hakol chayavim achilas matzah afil nashim avodim. Everybody's chayav to eat matzah, even women and avodim. Katan sheyachol lachol pas, as long as he's old enough to eat bread. Mechanchen also, we teach him matzah, so machilan also kazayis matzah. Mechanchen also b'mitzvos. Thank you. We are mechanchen. We teach him about the mitzvos, including the halacha of matzos. Also, we teach him to eat a shear of a kazayis. Chola, if you're sick, or zaken, or you're old, that he's not able to eat regular matzos. Showing about rakik v'mayim, then you can dip it in the water to soften it and make it easier for him to eat. As long as it doesn't get so breaking up and disintegrated, then already it's not considered matzah. That wouldn't be good. Halacha yad aleph. Like we said in halach above, correct. And here the Rambam is saying that even the chadchila for a zaken, or if you can't eat regular matzah, do it the chadchila and eat it that way. Halach yad aleph. Medivei sofrim. The Rabbanan decree ein maftirin achar matzah klum. So there's different lashonos in the Gemara. Some say ein maftirin achar pesach afikomen. Others say ein maftirin achar matzah afikomen. The Rambam is bringing down that one to say here that the last thing that you should be eating is the matzah. I feel kloyos egozim v'chayotz even nuts and seeds and things like that. Shouldn't eat anything after the matzah. Ella afa pisha acha matzah. Let's say you ate your matzah. And you ate other things, whether on purpose or by accident, after you finished your designated afikomen. You got to eat another shir kazayis matzah afterwards. Then then you can stop eating. Halacha yud beis. Asru chachamim lechol matzah be'erev Pesach. The chachamim said it's asr to eat matzah on erev Pesach. So that there should be a taiva, an enjoyment, a real hecker of the matzah when you get to the Suda at the Seder. Somebody who eats matzah on Erev Pesach, we give him rabbinic floggings until his soul leaves his body. So a lot of Rishonim take issue with this. Some people say it's a messed up girsa and it shouldn't be here. Other people say it's a messed up girsa and we need to add in, if he doesn't stop eating, in other words, if he's sitting there and you're flogging him and he's still shoving matzah into his mouth, you still flog him, keep flogging him until he's tasting option. Other ones say that, no, this is such an idea that somebody who's so chutzpahdik to be eating matzah on the afternoon, right, something's so wrong with what he's doing, that no, that's the kind of thing that the rabbis will say, your mamish asher tasting option. It's also to eat anything, not just matzah, but all foods. So this is talking about mecha kitana, which is 3:30 in the afternoon, and kimat close to it, which would mean 3 p.m. in the afternoon, the beginning of the 9th hour of the day. That way you should get to the Suda and you should be hungry. That way, by the time you get to Yechilas Matzah, you're going to have a taiva to really eat through that shear in a fast manner. But you can eat a little bit of fruit or rakos, a little bit of vegetables, as long as you don't get full. Even they would starve themselves, they would make themselves very hungry. And they would, the matzahs would be chaviv, they would be so dear to them. Mitzvos chavivin alav, thank you very much, with the nekudos, that the mitzvos should be chavivin on them, and that's why they would withhold themselves back from eating on Erev Pesach. But on the other Erev Shabbos and Erev Yom Tovim, then you can still eat, continue all the way until it gets dark. And the Rambam says in other places on Erev Shabbos and Erev Yom Tov, you're not supposed to be kovei asura during those times, but to eat a little bit is fine. A little snack is okay. And that concludes the 6th paragraph.
Very good. Very clear. All right.
Shkoyach.
Perek Shvi'i. 7th paragraph. Hilchos Chametz Matzah. Mitzvahs Asay Shel Torah L'Saper B'Nisim V'Niflaoi Sh'Nasu L'Avasin B'Mitzrayim B'Leil Chamisha Asar Nisan. It's a mitzvahs Asay, meaning it's a Torah commandment that we relate all the miracles and the wonders that happened to our forefathers in Mitzrayim on the 15th night of Nisan. How do we know? Remember this day that you went out. Remember the day of Shabbos. Just like we say, remember the day of Shabbos. How do we know that it's on the 15th? As we come to say that you will teach your son, you will tell your son on this day, this is what happened. This is implying that the mitzvah is when you have matzah maror before you. This matzah and this maror that is placed before you. Even a person who doesn't have sons, even if there were great chachamim, they also have to do the mitzvah of speaking about leaving Mitzrayim. Whoever elaborates on this, it's more praiseworthy. Halacha base. Mitzvah lo'odia labanim. It's a mitzvah to inform your sons. Even if they're not going to ask. As we know that it says, you shall teach your sons. How are you supposed to do it? You're supposed to do it according to the das, the knowledge of the son. That's how the father is supposed to teach. Ketzad, how is it? If you have a son who is very small or he's stupid, you say to him, Bni, we say to him, all of us were slaves like this shifcha, or like this Eved in Mitzrayim. So obviously, all the Jews had workers working for them.
I'm sure if they had little kids.
Okay. And on this night, on the 15th of Pesach, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he took us out to freedom. However, if he's not small or if he's not stupid and he's a chacham, we explained to him what happened to us on Mitzrayim, and all the miracles that happened to us through the Rebbe, through Moshe Rabbeinu. You do it according to the knowledge of the son. Halacha Gimel. You have to make some sort of shinui on this night. Why do we make these shinuim, these changes? In order that the son will come and he's going to ask, what is different about this night from all other nights? So much so that when they're going to ask, why is this night different? We're going to come and say, it was different in this way and it was different in that way, and this is the way, and this and that took place. Okay. How do we change our conduct on the night of Pesach? We give them roasted seeds and nuts. The table should be taken away
before they eat. We snatch matzah one from the other, and other things that are going to be different than what we would normally do on a Friday night. Ein loy ben, a person who doesn't have a son, his wife should ask him the question. Ein loy isha sha'elin zeh zeh. If he doesn't have a wife, he should ask his friends to ask him. And then we say all of us were chachamim and so on. How about if he's eating by himself, which happened many times by Corona, right? During COVID. You ask yourself, what is different about this night? Okay, we start out with very simple things, and then we go into more praise. Ketzad, what does this mean?
Is like negative things. Right?
Yeah, with the negative things, and then we go to more praise. Ketzad, maschil u'mesaper shebedechila hayu aviseinu b'imei terach u'melfanov kefim v'toyin achrei hevel v'roitfin avodazara. So first we start out when we speak about our forefathers, starting with Terach, Avram's father, and how he was kafir and he strayed after vanity, and they went after idol worship. Then we conclude with the true faith. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought us close. He separated us from the Gentiles, and he brought us close to his unity. Then we begin and we explain how we were servants to Paro in Mitzrayim, and all the evil that he did to us. And then we conclude with all the miracles and the wonders that happened to us and in our freedom. Then we go on and we speak about Arami sought to destroy my forefathers until we conclude this entire portion of the Haggadah. Whoever extends and explains this part of the Haggadah, it is more meshubach, it is more praiseworthy. Halacha, hey. Whoever doesn't say these three things on the night of the 15th, he does not fulfill his obligation. The Eluhen, Pesach, Matzah, Mar. These are the three things. You have to say Pesach, you have to say Matzah, you have to say Mar. Pesach al Shem, Shepasach HaMakom Baruch Hu al Batei Aviseinu v'Mitzrayim. When we say Pesach, we say because he jumped, HaKadosh Baruch Hu jumped over the houses of our forefathers in Mitzrayim. Shneimar, how do we know? V'amartem zevach Pesach hu laHashem. And you shall say that it is a Pesach, it is a Paschal offering for Hashem. Mar, what do we do? Al Shem Shemaru HaMitzrim B'Schaya Aviseinu Mitzrayim. By the name that the Mitzrim embittered our lives of our forefathers in Mitzrayim. Matzah al Shem Shenigalu. And when we say Matzah, it's because we were redeemed from Egypt. All these things that we spoke about, that we extend at length, and we say these three things of Pesach, Mar, and Matzah, this is what's called the Haggadah. Halacha Vav. Matzah means redemption. I thought that was also cool. Yeah. Okay. Right. I guess because we left in a rush, that's what got us out. We left with the matzah, not with the mar, not with the.
When we say
Pesach,
when we say al shloshim devarim in the Haggadah, we say matzah because he rushed us out so fast that the bus didn't give him enough time to rise, and that right we explain it. Rambam just says
this is
Shenigalim. That's what matzah means.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Halacha Vav. This is a Chassidish word. B'chol dor vador. Chayv Adam lehareis atzma ki'iluhu be'atzma yatsa ata mishubad Mitzrayim. Each and every generation, and b'derech agav, it says in Tanya that you should say b'chol yom v'yom, each and every day. Adam has to see himself as if he himself has been taken out from the shibud of Mitzrayim. Shenemar, huh? Now, right now, today. Yeah. He took us out from there. On this, what does the Torah command? That says, remember that you were a slave. meaning to say that it's as if you yourself were an Evid and you came out to Cherus, to freedom, and you were redeemed. You have a mitzvah to do this every single day. Okay. Halacha Zayin. Therefore, when a person is having his meal on this night, this is about the halacha of reclining. That a person, whenever he's eating, he has to recline as if he was coming out of freedom. Each and every person, whether it's a man, whether it's a woman, has to have 4 cups of wine. You do not do less than 4 cups. Even a ani who is given tzedakah, he cannot have less than 4 cups. Shir kol kois mehen revius. What is the amount of what we're supposed to drink? It's called a revius. By the way, we have a difference of opinion. What is a revius? You have 86 cc, or you have the Chazon Ish, which is the biggest, which is 150 cc. I believe Chabad goes by the Chaim Noah. Okay, that's a big cup. That's a big one. The Chaim Noah says 86 cc, which is 2.9 ounces, just under 3. Okay, halacha ches. Afilu ani should be Israel lo yachal ad sheyesed. Even an ani of the Jew, he should not eat until he has reclined. So even an ani has a mitzvah to recline. Isha in tzricha hasiba. However, a woman does not have a mitzvah to recline. Isha chashuva he eats tzricha hasiba. If she is an important woman, she's a rebbetzin, she should recline. Uba etzel aviv v'hashamish bifnei Rabbi. If you have a son before his father, or if you have an attendant before his master, tzrichim and siba, they need to recline. Aval talmid bifnei Rabbi ein mesavev ela in kain nasan loy Rabbi reshus. A student before his teacher, he does not recline unless the teacher gives him reshus to recline, permission to recline. The hasibas yamin in hasiba, a person who reclines on the right, not okay. You have to recline on your left. Reclining on your back or reclining forward, so like this is not good enough. You have to recline on your left. How do you do it? You do it when we're eating the kazayis and matzah, or when we're drinking the 4 cups. And if a person wants to recline during the other times that he's eating and drinking, it's more praiseworthy. And if he doesn't want to, he doesn't have to. Halacha tes. These 4 cups. We can mix it with water in order that it will become pleasant to drink. Because at that time of the Rambam, the wine was very concentrated and very thick, so therefore they had to mix it with water. Everything is according to that type of wine and according to the drinker. You cannot do less than a quarter of it being yain chai, which is this non-diluted wine. Okay. Shata, now we have a couple cases now. Shata arbar koisus elo miyain she'enu mazug. What if you drink 4 cups of this wine that is not mixed? It's this heavy duty wine. Yeah. Yatsi de bar koisus. You're yatsin doing 4 cups. Well, yatsi de chirus. However, you didn't come out in chirus. Shasa arba koisus mazugim bebas achas. How about if you drank the 4 cups of wine in one shot? You have fulfilled coming out in freedom, but you did not fulfill drinking 4 cups. A person who drank the majority of the cup from each of them, that's enough. You don't have to drink the entire thing. The roiv is enough.
That means you have to hold the cup is a revius. You don't have to drink half, or it means you have to still drink a revius, but if you have a cup that's a revius and a half.
Good question. I don't know. I would think, based on what we know and how we're raised, you have to have a revius of wine.
You don't have to consume the entire revius.
Oh, you don't?
No, majority of the revius, you're yaitzer.
Mulling gluten is generally sure.
Yeah.
So you have to drink, but you don't have to drink a full release.
So your cup is a revius and no more.
Cup is
Close to
your
the top,
revius.
and we drink half.
Yes,
You won't be
yes.
able- you won't be able to
The
make-
rabbis here are saying a half a revius is enough to fulfill the mitzvah.
No, Pesach, the Chachila, you're supposed to drink the entire cup.
Understood.
At the end, you drink the right of the cup.
Okay. Halacha Yud. All right. Kol kois kois me'arba koisas eilu. Each and every one of these four cups. Marach ala bracha b'fnei atzma. You say a bracha on the cup. Kois rishon emer al kiddush hayon. First one you say on kiddush. Kois sheni krida ala ba'esa gadol. Then the second one you say it on the Haggadah. Kois shlishim mevarach ala birkas mazon. The third one is for benching. Kois revi gomer ala v'esa halal mevarach ala birkas ashir. The last one is for halal and for the songs of praise. If he, aside from these cups, between each of these cups, if he wants to drink, he can drink. Between the benching and between halal, we do not drink. Okay. By the way, Shulchan Aruch says we do not drink between the first and second cups. Between the second and third cups, when you're doing your meal, definitely you're allowed to drink anyway. I advise people to drink some water then. Okay, halacha yid aleph. Hacharesis mitzvah medivrei soifrim. I didn't know this. Hacharesis is a mitzvah from the Rabbanim. Zeicher letit shehayu oivdin boy b'mitzrayim. This is a mitzvah that represents the clay that we were working when we were building for the mitzvah. Keitzad oisin oisa. How do we make this haresis? Likhin tamarim or gregres or tzimukin. You take dates, dried figs, or raisins, or something like that. We crush these together. You add vinegar to them. Then you add spices and you make them into a clay as clay is mixed into straw. You serve this on the night of Pesach. Eating mar by itself is not a mitzvah from the Torah. It's only it's dependent on eating it with the Pesach offering. That the mitzvah's aseh is to eat the meat of the Pesach offering with matzah together with maror. From the rabbis, what did we do? We eat maror on this night, even though we don't have the Karban Pesach. Last halacha, halacha yud gimel. Mirurim ha'amurim b'Torah. What is this maror that we eat, that we mentioned in the Torah? Hena chazeres v'ha'ulshin v'hatmacha v'chavina v'hamaror. You can use romaine lettuce, endives, horseradish, date ivy, or wormwood. All of these five types are called mar. If you ate one of them or a mixture of any of these five, you're yatzav. As long as these are still moist, meaning they're not dry. If you eat from the stem, even if it's yavish, even if it's dry, you're still yotzi. Shelakan or tvashan or bishlan. If you boil them or you pickle them or you cook them, ein yotzi bahen. Hatzlach Rabbi. Thank you.
Very good.
Yeah. Thank you.